The bounce house was half deflated, and my daughter Emma's 7th birthday party was in full swing when the process server walked through my backyard gate. I remember the exact moment because the sound of children's laughter suddenly seemed to fade into white noise, replaced by the thundering of my own heartbeat in my ears. "Victoria Shaw?" she asked, holding a manila envelope like it was a weapon. "Yes?" My voice came out smaller than intended. Behind me, I could hear Emma shrieking with delight as she opened another present, some kind of craft kit from her grandmother. The normalcy of that sound would haunt me for months. "You've been served." The woman turned and left before I could even process what was happening. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope right there, standing next to the Pinterest-perfect unicorn cake I'd spent 3 hours decorating the night before. The legal language blurred before my eyes, but certain words jumped out like neon signs. Petition for custody. Minor children. Emma Shaw and Lucas Shaw. Petitioner Linda Peterson Coleman. Stepmother's rights. Stepmother, Coleman. My maiden name was Coleman. It had been my husband Marcus's last name. We'd decided to hyphenate when we married 8 years ago, but I'd eventually just dropped it for simplicity. But this woman, this Linda Peterson, was claiming to be Linda Peterson Coleman. The paper plate I'd been holding slipped from my hand, sending a slice of rainbow cake splattering across our deck. The sound it made, that wet splat against the wood, would forever be associated with the moment my entire world tilted off its axis. "Mommy, are you okay?" Emma's voice cut through my shock. She stood there in her unicorn dress, the one she'd insisted on wearing for 3 days straight, her face smeared with purple frosting. "I'm fine, sweetheart," I lied, forcing my face into something resembling a smile. "Just go play with your friends. Mommy needs to make a quick phone call." But Marcus didn't answer. Not the first time, not the second, not the 5th. He was on another business trip. Phoenix this time. Or at least that's what he told me when he kissed me goodbye 3 days ago, smelling of that cologne I'd bought him for Christmas. Tom Ford, the one that cost more than our weekly grocery budget. I'd splurged because he'd been working so hard lately, taking all these extra trips to secure our financial future. God, I was such a fool. Let me back up. You need to understand who I thought I was before that day. I was Victoria Shaw, 34 years old, mother of 2, part-time marketing consultant, full-time family coordinator. I was the woman who had color-coded calendars for each family member. I was the mom who volunteered for every school field trip, who knew all the other parents' names, who made themed bento boxes that Emma would show off at lunch. Marcus and I had built what I thought was a beautiful life in our Denver suburb. We had the 2-story house, with the good schools nearby, the kind with the breakfast nook where we'd drink coffee on Sunday mornings while the kids watched cartoons. I thought we were happy. No, I knew we were happy, weren't we? The signs had been there, of course. They always are, aren't they? But when you're living inside the story, you can't see the plot twist coming. You explain them away. You make excuses. The business trips had started about 3 years ago. First, it was once a month. Growing the consulting firm, he'd said. Then twice a month. Then every other week. But the money was good. Great, even. We'd paid off my student loans, started college funds for the kids, even managed that trip to Disney World where Lucas lost his first tooth on Space Mountain. There were other things, too. The way he'd suddenly become protective of his phone, taking it with him, even to the bathroom. The new gym membership he never seemed to use, but paid for religiously. The nights he'd come home smelling wrong. Not like another woman's perfume, which might have been obvious, but like different laundry detergent, different soap, a different home. But the strangest thing? The thing that should have been my biggest red flag? It was the way he'd sometimes slip up on details about the kids. He'd ask about Emma's dance recital on the wrong day. He'd forget that Lucas was allergic to strawberries. How do you forget your son is allergic to strawberries? He'd buy duplicates of toys they already had, as if he couldn't quite remember what existed in their playroom. Now it all made horrible, crystal-clear sense. The Monday after the birthday party, I did what any rational woman would do. I hired a private investigator. Patricia Reeves came recommended by my divorce attorney. Yes, I'd already called one. Patricia looked nothing like the PIs in movies. She was in her 50s, wore reading glasses on a chain, and looked like she could have been the head of the PTA, which it turned out she had been before her own husband's infidelity led her to a career change. "Honey," she said, sitting across from me at a Starbucks while I ugly cried into a venti latte. "Men who lead double lives always make mistakes. They can't help it. The cognitive load of maintaining two separate realities, it's impossible to sustain perfectly. We just need to find where he slipped up." She was right. Oh God, was she right? Within a week, Patricia had uncovered the truth, and it was worse than I'd imagined. Marcus hadn't just been having an affair. He'd been living an entirely different life. In Phoenix, where all those business trips had taken him, he was Marcus Peterson Coleman, married to Linda Peterson for 5 years. They had a house, with a mortgage and a homeowners association, and a labradoodle named Biscuit. Linda was 38, a pharmaceutical sales rep with a 6-figure salary and a belief that she'd been trying to conceive with her husband for 3 years. The sound Patricia's fingers made, tapping on her tablet as she showed me the evidence, that soft tap, 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 felt like nails being hammered into a coffin. "There's more," Patricia said, her voice gentle but firm. "I found the marriage certificate." My coffee cup rattled against the saucer as I set it down. "That's impossible. We're married. I have our certificate. It's in our safe at home." "I know," Patricia said. She pulled up a document on her tablet. "This is from Arizona, filed 3 years after your marriage in Colorado." "But that's bigamy. That's illegal." "Yes, it is." The word illegal echoed in my mind. My husband wasn't just a cheater, he was a criminal. "But here's the interesting part," Patricia continued, pulling up another document. "Linda filed for custody claiming to be the stepmother. But look at this." She zoomed in on the marriage certificate. She signed it as Linda Peterson, her maiden name, which means she knew, I finished. She knew he was already married. The rage that filled me in that moment was pure and crystalline. It wasn't the hot, messy anger of betrayal. That would come later. This was cold, precise, surgical fury. This woman hadn't just been sleeping with my husband. She'd been complicit in the fraud, and now she was coming for my children. "Victoria," Patricia said, and I could tell by her tone that there was more. There's always more, isn't there? "I also found this." She showed me a Facebook profile, Linda's Facebook profile. It was mostly private, but the profile picture was public. It showed Linda and Marcus at what was clearly a wedding. Her in white, him in a tux I'd never seen. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the 2 children in the photo with them, Emma and Lucas, my children, at Linda's wedding. The sound that escaped me wasn't quite a scream. It was something more primal, more wounded. The barista looked over in concern, but Patricia waved her away. "When?" I managed to choke out. "When was this taken?" Patricia's fingers flew across her tablet. "Based on the metadata, last Thanksgiving." Last Thanksgiving. When Marcus had taken the kids to visit his mother in Phoenix, his mother who'd been dead for 15 years, I ran to the bathroom and threw up. The sound of my retching echoed off the tiles, mixing with the generic Starbucks playlist filtering through the speakers. Someone knocked on the door, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. How could I be okay? How could anything ever be okay again? When I finally emerged, Patricia had packed up her things and was waiting by the door. "We're going to bury them," she said simply. "Both of them. But first, we need to be smart. Linda made a crucial error filing this custody petition. She's given us the home court advantage." "How?" "She filed in Colorado, establishing jurisdiction here. She probably thought it would be easier to challenge you on your home turf, make you look bad in front of your own community. But Colorado doesn't recognize bigamous marriages, and she's admitted in legal documents to being party to one. She's handed us everything we need." "What about Marcus?" Patricia's smile was sharp. "Oh, honey, we're going to destroy Marcus. But first, we protect those babies. Everything else comes second." The next 3 weeks were a blur of legal preparation and detective work. While my attorney, James Morrison, built our case, I became obsessed with understanding how I'd been so blind. I went through everything. Credit card statements, phone records, social media, everything. The paper trail, once I knew what to look for, was extensive. Marcus had been sloppy, or maybe he'd just been arrogant, assuming I'd never look. The credit card statements told a story of their own. Charges in Phoenix during times he was supposedly in other cities. A jewelry store purchase the day before last Valentine's Day, when he'd given me a spa gift certificate. Home Depot purchases that didn't match any improvements to our house, but lined up perfectly with Patricia's surveillance photos of Linda's newly renovated kitchen. But it was Lucas's iPad that gave me the smoking gun. Marcus had set it up for him, syncing it to his iCloud account so Lucas could play games. What he'd forgotten was that photo sharing was enabled. Every picture Marcus took backed up to that iPad. I sat on Lucas's dinosaur-themed bed, scrolling through thousands of photos with shaking hands. There they were, hundreds of pictures of Marcus's other life. Linda at restaurant dinners, Linda on beaches, Linda at what was clearly their wedding, wearing a dress that cost more than my entire wedding had, and scattered throughout, like a punch to the gut every time, my children. Photos of Emma and Lucas at Linda's house, in Linda's pool, opening Christmas presents under Linda's tree. There was even a video of Emma calling Linda Aunt Lynn, while Linda taught her to make cookies in that renovated kitchen. The sound of Emma's little voice saying Aunt Lynn through the iPad's speakers made me want to smash the device against the wall. Instead, I forwarded everything to Patricia and James. James Morrison was the kind of lawyer you want in your corner during the worst moment of your life. 6'4", former college linebacker with a voice that could make opposing counsel wet themselves. But with clients, he was gentle, thorough, and absolutely ruthless in pursuit of justice. "Victoria," he said during one of our strategy sessions, "I need you to understand something. Linda Peterson thinks she's going to walk into that courtroom and paint you as an unfit mother. She's going to claim that because Marcus brought the children to her home, because they have a relationship with her, that she has standing as a de facto parent. Can she do that? She can try. But what she doesn't realize is that she's admitted, in writing, to being a party to bigamy. In Colorado, that's a Class 6 felony. The moment she filed this custody petition as Marcus's wife, knowing he was already married, she implicated herself in a crime. But she'll say she didn't know." James pulled out a piece of paper. "This is from her Facebook, a post from 2 years ago." He read aloud, "Some days are harder than others. Being a part-time bonus mom means missing out on so many moments, but I trust God's plan, and I know that someday our family will be whole." Part-time bonus mom. She'd known. She'd known the entire time. "There's more," James said. He pulled out another document. "This is a lease agreement for a storage unit in Phoenix. It's in Linda's name. But guess what was in it?" I shook my head, unable to guess what fresh hell awaited. Documents. Marcus had been storing documents there, including your marriage certificate, your children's birth certificates, even your tax returns. Linda had access to this unit. She knew exactly who you were, exactly what Marcus was doing. The storage unit. God, the calculated cruelty of it all. She'd had pieces of my life locked away in a metal box in the desert while she played house with my husband and my children. "We have one more piece of leverage," James said, his voice dropping. Patricia found something interesting about Linda's employer. Patricia had discovered that Linda's pharmaceutical sales territory included Colorado. She'd been coming to my state for work for years. In fact, she'd been at a conference in Denver the weekend Emma was born. The same weekend Marcus had supposedly been stuck in traffic and missed the delivery. "She was here," I whispered. "She was in the same city when I was giving birth to our daughter, and he was with her instead of me." James nodded grimly. "The hotel records confirm it." He checked in under his name. "Room service for 2. Champagne." Champagne. While I was screaming through contractions, begging for an epidural that came too late, he was drinking champagne with another woman. The sound I made wasn't crying. I was past crying. It was something more like a wounded animal, something that came from a place deeper than tears. "We're going to use all of this," James said firmly. "But Victoria, I need you to prepare yourself. We're about to go nuclear. Once we file our response and counter-petition, once we present this evidence, there's no going back. Marcus will likely face criminal charges. Linda, too. Are you prepared for that? Was I prepared? My children had been living a double life they didn't even understand. They'd been pawns in a sick game, played by two adults who should have protected them. Emma had been having nightmares for months. Was it because she sensed something wrong in those visits to Phoenix? Lucas had started wetting the bed again. Was his little mind trying to process the confusion of two homes, two lives? I'm prepared, I said, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. They came for my children, both of them. They made my babies accomplices to their crime. So yes, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes. James smiled, the kind of smile a shark might give before feeding time. Good, because I've already had a very interesting conversation with the Phoenix District Attorney's Office. They're very interested in Mrs. Peterson's activities. Marcus finally came home 4 days after the birthday party. I heard his key in the lock at 11:47 p.m. I know because I was lying in bed, wide awake, watching the numbers change on the digital clock. The sound of his footsteps on our stairs, once comforting, now made my skin crawl. He slipped into bed beside me, careful not to wake me. Or so he thought. His body was tense. He knew something was wrong. The service had tried to reach him too, but he'd been dodging them like he'd been dodging my calls. "Where were you?" I asked in the darkness. He startled. "Jesus, Vic, you scared me. I told you, Phoenix, the Richardson contract." "Stop." My voice was calm, eerily calm. I'd practiced this moment. "Just stop. I know about Linda." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear his breathing change, could practically hear his mind racing, calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew. "I don't know what you're talking about." I flicked on the bedside lamp. The sudden light made him squint, but I wanted to see his face. I needed to see it. "Linda Peterson Coleman, your wife, your other wife." His face went through a series of transformations, shock, fear, and then, unbelievably, indignation. "You hired someone to follow me?" I laughed, actually laughed. The sound was harsh, bitter, nothing like my usual laugh. "That's your response? Really? Your other wife is trying to take our children, and you're upset that I hired a PI? It's not what you think." "Which part isn't what I think, Marcus? The part where you committed bigamy? The part where you took our children to her house without my knowledge? The part where you missed Emma's birth to be with her?" Each accusation hit him like a physical blow. Good. "Victoria, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How you've been living a double life for 5 years? How you exposed our children to your crime? How you and your accomplice, because that's what she is, Marcus, your accomplice, decided to try to steal my babies?" He sat up, running his hands through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Now it just looked pathetic. "It started as a mistake," he began. "A mistake? You accidentally married another woman?" "I met her at a conference. Things with us were difficult. You were so focused on Emma, and I felt invisible. Linda saw me, really saw me." "So you married her." "I was going to tell you, ask for a divorce, but then you got pregnant with Lucas and I couldn't leave. I couldn't do that to you, to the kids. So instead, you decided to commit felony bigamy?" He flinched at the word felony. "She knew I was married at first. It was just an affair. But then she wanted more, and I created documents. Fake divorce papers. I told her it was finalized." This was new information. "You're telling me Linda doesn't know you're still married to me?" His silence was answer enough. "Oh my God," I breathed. "You lied to both of us. You've been lying to everyone." "I was going to fix it," he said desperately. "I just needed time to figure out..." "To figure out what? Which family you wanted to keep?" "No, I love you, Victoria. I love our kids." "Don't!" My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Don't you dare say you love our children. You made them props in your sick fantasy. You confused them, endangered them, exposed them to your criminal behavior." "They don't know anything. Lucas asked me last week why Daddy has 2 phones. I interrupted. "Emma told her teacher that sometimes Daddy lives in a different house. They know something, Marcus. Children always know." He deflated then, the fight going out of him. What happens now? Now? Now you're going to leave. You're going to pack a bag and leave, and you're not going to come back until my lawyer contacts you. You can't keep me from my children. I pulled out my phone and showed him the photo, the one from Linda's wedding, with our children in it. This is evidence of child endangerment, Marcus. You involved minors in the commission of a felony. James Morrison says you're looking at 2 to 6 years in prison. Maybe more if the DA wants to make an example. The color drained from his face. Prison? What did you think would happen? That you could just keep juggling 2 families forever? That Linda would never find out? That I would never find out? I'll fight the custody thing, he said weakly. I'll tell Linda to drop it. Oh, Marcus, I said, almost pitying him. Linda already knows about me. She's known all along. She has our marriage certificate in a storage unit in Phoenix. The last bit of facade crumbled. He looked at me, really looked at me, and for a moment I saw the man I'd fallen in love with 12 years ago at a coffee shop in Boulder. The man who'd made me laugh so hard I'd snorted latte out my nose. The man who'd held my hand through 36 hours of labor with Emma. The man who'd cried when Lucas took his first steps. That man was still in there, somewhere, buried under lies and cowardice and selfish choices. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know, I said, and I meant it. But sorry doesn't undo this. Sorry doesn't protect our children from the trauma you've caused. Sorry doesn't make you less of a criminal. He packed a bag in silence. I watched from the doorway of our bedroom. Not our bedroom anymore, just the bedroom, as he grabbed random clothes, his toothbrush, his phone charger. Both phone chargers. Can I say goodbye to them? He asked at the front door. No, you don't get to wake them up at midnight for your convenience. You can explain this to them with a court-appointed supervisor present. The door closed behind him with a soft click, such a small sound for the end of a marriage. The custody hearing was set for 6 weeks later. 6 weeks of single motherhood, of deflecting questions from Emma about where Daddy was, of Lucas's increased bedwetting, of well-meaning school moms asking if everything was okay. But I wasn't idle, and James and I built our case methodically. We had the marriage certificates, the financial records, the photos from the iPad, Patricia's surveillance, and a new ace up our sleeve, Marcus himself. He'd been arrested 2 weeks after leaving our house, not for bigamy, not yet, but for fraud. It turned out that in order to qualify for the mortgage on Linda's house, he'd submitted false documents claiming to be divorced. Bank fraud, federal crime. Linda had been arrested too, as an accessory. She'd been released on bail, but her employer had immediately terminated her. Something about morals clauses and criminal behavior not reflecting company values. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I stood in Emma's doorway, watching her sleep with her stuffed unicorn clutched to her chest. Then Lucas's room, where he'd kicked off his dinosaur blanket and was sprawled like a starfish. These innocent souls who had no idea their world was about to shift tectonically. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Judge Catherine Walsh, presiding. A woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. James had been pleased when we drew her. She has 3 kids and went through a nasty divorce herself, he'd said. She doesn't tolerate people who harm children. Linda was there with her attorney, a nervous-looking man who kept shuffling papers. She looked different from her Facebook photos. Older, tired, defeated. She wore a conservative black suit that didn't quite fit right, like she'd lost weight rapidly. Good. Marcus sat between us, at a separate table with his criminal defense attorney. He looked hollowed out, a ghost of the confident man who'd left for business trips with a spring in his step. Your Honor, James began, his voice filling the small courtroom, we're here today because Ms. Linda Peterson filed a petition for custody of my client's minor children, claiming to be their stepmother. However, as we will demonstrate, Ms. Peterson is not, and has never been, the legal stepmother of these children. Her marriage to Marcus Coleman is invalid, bigamous, and criminal. Linda's attorney tried to argue standing, tried to claim that Linda had formed a bond with the children, that she'd been a de facto parent. Judge Walsh let him speak for exactly 90 seconds before cutting him off. Counselor, she said, her voice crisp, Are you seriously arguing that a woman who knowingly participated in bigamy, who was complicit in deceiving these children about their family structure, should be granted custody rights? Your Honor, my client was unaware. I have here. Judge Walsh lifted a document. A storage unit lease in your client's name containing the legal marriage. Certificate of Victoria and Marcus Coleman, dated 3 years before her own fraudulent marriage. Would you like to explain how she was unaware? The silence was deafening. James stood. Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence of the systematic deception these children were subjected to. What followed was brutal. James presented everything, the photos, the financial records, the travel documents. But the worst part, the part that made Linda visibly crumble, was the video from Emma's birthday party. Patricia had gotten additional footage from one of the other parents who'd been recording their own child. In it, you could hear Emma in the background, right after I'd been served, asking another child, "My daddy has important friends in Arizona. Maybe that lady knows them." Even a 7-year-old had internalized the lie. Arizona, Daddy's important friends. Your Honor, James continued, the psychological evaluation of both minor children, conducted by Dr. Sarah Patterson, indicates significant confusion and distress related to their father's double life. Emma has been having nightmares about 2 mommies fighting over her. Lucas has regressed developmentally. These children have been harmed by the defendant's actions. Linda's attorney tried one last attempt. Your Honor, my client loves these children. Love? Judge Walsh's voice could have frozen water. Love doesn't involve deceiving children. Love doesn't involve making them unwitting accomplices to criminal behavior. Love, counselor, protects children from harm, not subjects them to it. She turned to Linda. Ms. Peterson, do you have anything to say? Linda stood, shaking. I just wanted a family. I couldn't have children of my own, and Marcus said... He said what, Ms. Peterson? He said you didn't appreciate them. Linda looked at me for the first time. He said you were cold, career-obsessed, that the children needed a real mother. The rage that filled me was volcanic, but I held it in. This wasn't the time. Judge Walsh's expression didn't change. And you believe that justified your participation in bigamy? That justified confusing and potentially traumatizing 2 innocent children? Linda started crying. Ugly, genuine sobs that echoed in the small courtroom. But I felt no pity. She'd made her choices. I'm prepared to rule, Judge Walsh announced. The courtroom fell silent except for Linda's muffled sobs. Ms. Peterson, your petition for custody is not only denied, but is considered frivolous and malicious. You have no standing, no rights, and no claim to these children. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for consideration of additional charges related to child endangerment. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Coleman, your parental rights are hereby suspended pending the outcome of your criminal trial. You will have no contact with the minor children except through court-supervised visitation if and when you qualify for such. Finally, she looked at me. Mrs. Shaw, you have sole legal and physical custody of Emma and Lucas Shaw. The court recommends continued therapy for the children and authorizes you to make all decisions regarding their welfare without input from Mr. Coleman. The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed like thunder. It was over. But really, it was just beginning. Linda collapsed after the ruling. Not dramatically, not for show, but a real medical emergency collapse. The bailiff called for paramedics, and she was taken out on a stretcher. Her attorney told James later that she'd been hospitalized for exhaustion and dehydration. I'd learned later, through the legal grapevine, that she'd attempted to take her own life 2 days after the hearing. She survived, spent 3 weeks in psychiatric care, and eventually pled guilty to reduced charges in exchange for probation and mandatory therapy. She moved back to Ohio to live with her elderly parents. Marcus would never see her again. Marcus himself took a plea deal. 18 months in minimum security for fraud, 3 years probation, and permanent loss of unsupervised custody rights. He served 11 months, getting out early for good behavior. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The day after the hearing, I sat Emma and Lucas down for the conversation I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old that their father had another family? That the Aunt Lynn they'd met was actually Daddy's other wife? That Daddy had done something very wrong and wouldn't be living with us anymore? Daddy made some big mistakes, I told them, holding them close on our living room couch. Adult mistakes that hurt people's feelings. Did he hurt your feelings, Mommy? Emma asked, her big brown eyes, Marcus's eyes, full of concern. Yes, baby, he hurt my feelings very much. But more importantly, he broke some important rules, and now he has to face consequences. Like when I hit Lucas and had to go in timeout? Emma asked. Similar, but much more serious. Lucas, sweet Lucas, patted my hand. It's okay, Mommy. We still love you. The sound of his little voice, so earnest, so pure, broke something in me. I cried then, really cried, for the first time since this whole nightmare began. Both children climbed into my lap, their small arms wrapped around me, and we stayed like that for a long time. The next months were hard. Brutal, actually. Emma's nightmares got worse before they got better. Lucas withdrew, becoming clingy and anxious. Dr. Patterson, their therapist, was a godsend. Through play therapy and patience, she helped them process what had happened in age-appropriate ways. The financial hit was significant. With Marcus's accounts frozen and his income gone, I had to go back to work full-time. My mom moved in temporarily to help with the kids. The house felt too big, too empty, too full of ghosts. But slowly, we rebuilt. I threw myself into my marketing business, taking on clients I would have passed on before. One of them, surprisingly, was a law firm specializing in family law. They'd heard about my case through James and wanted someone who understood their clients' pain points. Within 6 months, I was their director of marketing, making more than Marcus and I had made combined. Emma joined a theater group and discovered she loved performing. The same imagination that had given her nightmares became her superpower on stage. Her first performance as Goldilocks in the community theater production, the sound of her voice ringing out clear and confident, was better than any therapy. Lucas found his courage in karate. The little boy who'd been so anxious became focused, disciplined. The day he broke his first board, the crack of the wood splitting was like the sound of his fear breaking apart. And me? I found myself. Not the me I'd been before. That woman was gone. But someone stronger. Someone who knew she could survive anything. Marcus wrote me a letter from prison. I have it memorized. Victoria, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. I destroyed our family, traumatized our children, and betrayed your trust in ways that can never be repaired. I want you to know that I take full responsibility. Linda didn't know the truth at first, though she figured it out eventually. We were both wrong, but I was the architect of this disaster. I think about Emma's laugh and Lucas's dinosaur obsession every day. I know I've lost the right to be their father in any real sense. I just hope that someday, when they're older, they might understand that despite everything, I did love them. I just love myself more, and that's something I'll have to live with forever. Please don't respond to this letter. I don't deserve your words. Just know that I'm sorry, and I hope you and the kids find the happiness I stole from you. Marcus. I never responded, but I kept the letter, filed away with all the other evidence of this chapter of our lives. Someday, when the kids are older, when they have questions, I'll have answers. The whole truth, documented and preserved. Mom, can you zip me up? Emma calls from her room. She's 10 now, all long legs and preteen attitude, but still my baby. Tonight is her big performance. Dorothy in the middle school production of The Wizard of Oz. Coming, I call back, but Lucas beats me to it. I got it, Em, he shouts, racing up the stairs. At 7, he's the protector, the one who checks that doors are locked and his sister has her lunch money. The anxiety mellowed into carefulness, watchfulness. He's been the man of the house since before he understood what that meant. As I watch them from the doorway, Lucas carefully zipping Emma's costume, Emma adjusting his clip-on tie, he insisted on dressing up for his sister's big night. I'm struck by how far we've come. There, Lucas declares. You look perfect. Thanks, buddy, Emma says, ruffling his hair. Then she sees me. Mom, are you crying? Happy tears, I assure her. Though that's only partially true. They're tears for everything. For what we lost, what we survived, what we've built. My phone buzzes. It's a text from David, the man I've been dating for 6 months. He's a single dad, widowed, who understands that my kids come first, always. Break a leg to Emma, I'll be in row G with flowers. I haven't introduced him to the kids yet. I'm not ready. They're not ready. But maybe soon. The doorbell rings, and it's my mom, here to watch the kids while I grab seats. She moved to Denver permanently after everything happened. Said she needed to be close to her grandkids. The truth is, I needed her too. My stars, Emma, you look just like Judy Garland, she exclaims, and Emma beams. As we pile into the car, Lucas asks, Is Dad coming? Marcus has supervised visitation now, every other Saturday for 4 hours. The kids see him at a center with a social worker present. It's awkward and stilted, but it's something. He's trying to rebuild, to earn back trust, one supervised hour at a time. Not tonight, buddy, I say carefully. This is our special night. Good, Lucas says firmly. I don't want him there. Emma is quiet, conflicted as always. She remembers more, understands more. She's angry, but also sad, missing the dad she thought she had, while resenting the one she actually got. At the theater, Emma hugs me tight before heading backstage. Love you, Mom. Love you too, superstar. Mom, she says, pulling back to look at me. I'm glad you fought for us. I know what Dad and that lady tried to do. I'm glad you won. The sound of her young voice, so mature, so knowing, breaks my heart and fills it simultaneously. I'd fight for you every single time, I tell her, always. As the lights dim and the overture begins, I sit between Lucas and my mom, David a respectful few seats away. The curtain rises, and there's Emma, red shoes sparkling under the stage lights, her voice clear and strong as she sings about somewhere over the rainbow. The sound of her voice, confident and pure, fills the auditorium. In it, I hear everything. Pain transformed into power, fear into courage, betrayal into triumph. We're not in Kansas anymore, that's for sure, but we're exactly where we need to be. Home. Have you ever discovered a betrayal that changed everything? How did you find the strength to fight back? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you think Linda and Marcus got what they deserved, type justice in the comments. Remember, you're stronger than you know, and sometimes the biggest betrayals lead to the greatest triumphs. If you've been through something similar, drop it to show solidarity with all the warriors out there fighting for their families.